Welcome to INF154 Introduction to Programming Part 2. So in this part, we are going to focus on the graphical user interface. So the prerequisite for this video is that you watched the first video, which was Introduction to Programming Using Variables, how to store values in variables. So in this part, we are going to start to learn about the graphical user interface that you are going to use throughout the semester and next semester. So I'm going to cover the basics, the core concepts of those graphical user interface controls. So a graphical user interface, it's a visual way of interacting with a computer using items such as windows, icons, and menus used by most modern operating systems. So let's start with the basic controls. So we have the button. So you know that from your Visual Studio Code, you can get your controls using the toolbox. So I'm going to use the shortcut Control Alt X. Then there I'm going to type button. Then the button must appear. That's how you get the button. So this is the button. So where are we using the button? So this button is used as an event handler. So it does something when the button is clicked, or something has to happen when the button is clicked. So that is an event handler. So the naming convention is btn, then you put the name of that specific button. So the code is usually written within the button event handler. So in most cases, you write code inside the button event handler method. So when you double click on the button, you can access the event handler method. So what are the basic properties of a button? So I'm going to cover a few. So we have the text. So the text, it's the name that you give, or the text that must be displayed on your button. For example, this thing, if we go to the properties window on the right and scroll and look for .text, this is text. So the text is button 1. Notice that also here you have button 1. If I change this, let's say I enter something, submit something like that, and I press enter, notice that the text on the button also changed. So the text property is the text that you want your button to display. So there's nothing much with the button. You can also change the name. As you know, to change the name, you just go to the name property. Then to give it the name, you just say btn, then the specific name that you want to give it. Let me just say submit. That's how you deal with the button. So other properties you just experience, like increasing the size, you can just like drag here like that. You can increase the size of your button. Increasing the text, you go to the properties, then you will look for font, then you just click on this white thing. On font you will see, then you just click on this white thing, then you are going to get the font. You can increase the size, you can do whatever you want, but this is for you to experiment with if you want, but this is for you. Then the next property, the for color, it changes the text color. So this submit, now it's black. That's the for color. If you want to change it, you can also change it there. Then normally you would say custom, then that's where you will select like any color you want, then the text will change. Then the other important property is it's the background color. So you look for the back color, this one. So this is your back color. You can just play around with it, custom, then I can say red, whatever. That's how you deal with those basics. So that's the button. Then the next thing that we are going to um, cover, or before we can cover, to activate the event handler method, you double click on the button. So if I double click on this button, I'm going to get it's still loading. I'm going to get this method. So this is an event handler method. So if I write code, every time I click on the button has to do something. For example, if I say message box dot show, maybe I say hello, whatever, then I save and I execute the code. Every time I click the button, this code is going to be executed, which is still running. Okay, let's see. So no errors so far. Then why is it taking time now? I think it's because I'm using OBS and Visual Studio Code. That's why it's taking time to load. Let's see. So it's still loading, but every time you click, when this code is done executing, every time you click the button, it must display text. Like here, if I click submit, it must give me a message box. It must execute the code inside the event handler. So if I say submit, I'm getting this hello on the message box. So those are the basics of your button control. So the next thing that we are going to focus on is before we can move to other controls, we have to know the general structure of a program, or the block diagram of any program. So for any program, you must have your inputs, which represents the data. So you store those inputs in variables. Then after getting the inputs, you send the inputs to this block. In this block, we are going to have a process, or we are going to have calculations. That's where you are going to have your flow diagram. Then after this process, you give the result, which is your output, or you display that specific result. Where do we get inputs from? That's the main question. So you can get inputs from the text box. So the text box is represented by this the text box. Let me see what happened. So we have form1.cs and this let me see. So it seems as if something went wrong on my code. Let me do this close solution. Then I'm going to create a new project. Then I'm going to say Windows form. Then I'm just going to name it session 1. Then let me say back. Let me say session 1. Then let me click next. Then create. Then it's going to load. So while it's loading, the text box is represented by a rectangular box. So the text box, from the name text, it's used to get the text as an input. So we collect input text from a text box. You also display text on a text box. You can also display text, or it can be an output on that specific text box. Then the properties of a text box, the naming style is txt, then you put the name. So that's how you name a text box. Then how do we access the text? Or how do we access the text? Or how do we get the data from a text box? So let's say you have this specific text box name. So this is your label, the name. Or let me just do this. Then I'm going to say text box. So this is your text box. In terms of properties, it has similar properties to your button control. But for now, let me just do this label. So this is the label that you're going to have. Then I'm just going to say name. So this is just name. So this is the label, then this is your text box. I'm going to say txt name. Txt name. Then I'm going to put a button. Maybe I'm just saying button. Then I'm going to call this button submit. So I'm going to say btn submit for the name, btn submit. Then for the value, I'm just going to put submit, something like this. So now the question is, how do we access the text that we store or that we get from the user from this text box? So first you have to declare a string, which is a name, because we want to access the text. So in this case, we are declaring a string called name. So we know that when we declare the string name, in memory it's name and an empty box. We don't know the value because we didn't initialize the name variable. Then I say name equals to, then txt name, this is the name of your text box, dot text. Then we have to ask ourselves, every time you're using an equal sign, ask yourself, what is the data type of the variable on your left? The data type of name is a string. Then what's the data type of the variable on the right? The data type is a string. Dot text is a string. So this will also be a string. So this is valid. So if it's not valid, we had to convert to. So let's just do that. Let's say, okay, I have my string name. Then I can just zoom in. Name is, then we don't know the value of name. Then I'm going to get the name. Name is equals to txt name dot text. I cannot say equals to txt name. Txt name is a control. It's a text box. So in the left I have a string, on the right I have a text box control. It's not a string, so I have to say dot text. Now I'm accessing the value that's inside the text box. Then I can maybe do something, maybe message box dot show, then the name. So initially we had this name which was empty. Now we are storing the value, the text from the text box inside our name. Then we are displaying that name. So let's execute this. Hopefully it won't disappoint as it did initially. So it's done building. Now I can say A, then I can say submit. I will get this A. So let's try to analyze. So initially my name was empty. Then why is it? Oh, let me close here. So it seems as if this thing doesn't want to. show. Okay, now it's back. Let me just zoom in, then zoom out. So when we say name equals to txt name.text, we are storing this text we got from the text box inside our variable, which is name. So name is this, then that AAA is transferred to the name. So now how do we change the text from a rich text box? To change the text, we just say txt name.text equals to then the value. So the value must be a string, because on the left we have a string, on the right it must also be a string. So for example, let's say we want this thing to only change when we click submit. So we don't want to allow the user to enter something. So to do that, we first have to disable. So disable, you say on read only, on properties you look for the read only, then you set it to true. So now the user cannot edit this. So I'm going to go to the button, which is double clicking on that button, then I'm going to remove this code. Now if I say txt name dot text equals to maybe hello, something like that, a basic thing, then I execute the code. Then executing the code, so it's building, then we are going to get this. So if I try to edit, I can't do anything. I'm trying to enter values because the read only property doesn't allow the user to enter something. So if I click on submit, it must execute whatever code I have. So it's going to change the text of this text box to hello. So if I click this, I'm going to get this hello. So the next thing that we are going to do is to look at the numeric up down. So the general naming convention for the numeric up down, it's NUD, then you put the name. So let's see how it works. So the thing, like the general structure of the numeric up down, how it's shown on the graphical user interface, you have these two arrows. Then let's just go to the form and let's add a numeric up down. So I'm just going to say Control Alt X to open my toolbox, or you can do it the long way, which is view toolbox, whatever. Then I'm going to say numeric up down. The numeric up down is going to appear. So now I'm just going to put it here underneath name. Then I can move this button, then I can put a label. So a label is not that important, it's just for naming or to show the user what's this. So now I'm just going to put my label here. So for that label, I'm going to name it something like age. Then I'm going to, so the user has to enter the name and the age. So I'm just going to enable this. So I'm going to the read only property. I want the user to enter something, so I'm going to set it to false. Then I have that. So how do we deal with this numeric up down? So numeric up down is used to store numbers, whole numbers or real numbers in general, not whole numbers, real numbers. So real numbers include integers, doubles. So this one doesn't store, it doesn't store strings, it only stores integers or decimals. So you can play around with the settings. If we go to the settings and we scroll, down, for the numeric up down. So I'm selecting numeric up down, then I go to the properties. Then the most important property is dot value. So a numeric up down stores values, so it can be anything there. Then minimum, this is where you set the minimum. If I want negative numbers, I can say my minimum is -50. So this numeric up down can store any negative number from -50. So it's going to allow -50, -49, -48 until the maximum. In this case, it's 100. If I wanted positive values, if I wanted values larger than this 100, I was going to enter maybe 1000, whatever. Or if I want to limit this to 10, I can do that. If I want to limit this to negative, let's say 16, I can do that. That's how you set the minimum. For the age, I'm going to allow values between 0 and let's say 18, something like that. So this numeric up down, automatically it will limit the user to enter values between 0 and 18. Then the other property is read only. In this case, we want the user to enter something. If you don't want the user to edit that numeric up down, you can disable that read only property. Then another thing is the name, which is obvious. So I'm going to call it NUD, then I'm going to call it age. Then I just press enter. Then what can we do? Let me see. Why is it showing 18? Let me see minimum and maximum. Yeah, I think it's fine. Maximum, minimum. Yeah, it's fine. Then what do we want to do now? We want to get before we can get anything, let's just finish with the numeric up down. So how do we access values? When we access values, it doesn't mean that we are changing, we are only reading. So we have nud name dot value. This is the general syntax. For example, you have int number is equals to 0, then number is equals to nud number dot value. Nud number dot value, it's a value, it's not an integer, it's not a string, it's not a double. So in my left I have an integer, in my right I have a value. So I have to convert to int so that the assignment operator can work. So I'm going to have this convert to int 32. nud number dot value means that whatever value is inside this specific numeric up down, I want to convert it to int 32 and store that result in this number. So in this case, we can name it's NUDH. So let's say in button submit, I'm going to have string name. So here I have declare variables, whatever. The main goal of this tutorial is the main goal of this session is not to go through the coding. Coding is for the upcoming part. In this case, we are just exploring. So I have a string name, then I have an integer age, then I say name is equals to, where do we get our name? We get the name from this text box. So it's a text box. So I'm going to say txt name dot text. Then I ask myself, this is a string on the left, this dot text is a string on the right, so this is valid, nothing to change. Then I have age is equals to, where do we get the age? From the numeric up down, so it's nud age, then dot value. But dot value, in my left I have an integer, in my right I have a value. So I can't assign this to, I have to convert this to an integer. So it's convert, then to int 32, then I just open and close. Then everything is sorted now. Now I can display message box, dot show, maybe name plus, then I can say space plus, then age I can say to string. So we, for now, just focus on these parts. Later we are going to cover more about strings, this string addition or string concatenation. We are going to cover it later. Basically, I'm trying to display name, then a space, then the age. Let's execute the code and see what's going to happen. Then let's say I just enter a name AAA, age, I can go down, or I can go down like this. You see the minimum is 0, then the maximum is 18. What if I say 200? Is it going to allow me? You see, it converted that 200 to 18. If I say negative 500, it converted that to 0. So I can just pick any age, maybe 16. Then I click on the submit. Then I'm going to get my name, space, then the age. So that's how you access values from the numeric up down. You just say nudh.value, then you always have to convert to something. You can convert to int32, you can convert to string, you can convert to double, but at the end you have to convert with the numeric up down. Then is it possible to change the value from the numeric up down? Yes. Changing, always when you change something, you just use an equal sign. If I don't see an equal sign or an assignment operator, then I cannot change that specific thing. So in this case, we are saying nud name.value is equals to the value that we want to put. For example, let's say we want to enter, like to change the value of the numeric up down. nudh dot value is equals to maybe 20, something like this. So when I execute this code, I'm going to get this. So I exceeded the minimum, the, let's say 16 or 15. Then now I execute this, because that time I exceeded the maximum. Now if I click this code, it's only going to be executed when I click the button. So if I click the button, it must change this value to 15. So it didn't. So what's the problem? Every time when we use an equal sign, we have to ask ourselves, in the left we have what? A value. In our right we have what? An integer. So I have to convert this. I don't know if there's value. Let's see if there's convert to value, which I don't think it's possible. I don't think this is possible. Let's say 15, then let's say value, and see if this is possible. So we can't directly do that. Let's say int number equals to 15, or let's say value first, or maybe if we say value, something like this. So it's not okay. So let's say number equals to 15, then number, and see if it's going to work. So it can't work if we just put values. We have to store them in variables. Now I can execute this, I think. Let's see what's going to happen now. if I click the submit, now it did work. So you have to store that in a variable before you can put it to this value or to the numeric up down. So yeah, those are the basics of the numeric up down. Then now, before we move to other controls, let's learn more about strings. So we know that a string, from the previous lesson we know that a string is an array or a sequence of one or more characters. So in simple terms, a string is a text. So examples, we have the string name. When we say string name in memory, it's represented like this. We have an empty string. Then when we say name is equals to hello, then in memory we have this name equals to, then hello, this hello is going to be separated into characters. So we are going to have H, which is stored in position 0, E, which is stored in position 1, L, which is stored in position 2, another L, which is stored in position 3. Then we can move to O, which is stored in the last position. So this is how strings are stored in memory. They are not stored like, they are stored as it's a sequence of characters. They are stored as individual characters. If I say name is equals to John at the later stage, so my name is it's this John. So even John is going to be separated into a sequence of characters where the first character starts at 0, second character 1, third character, and so on. Then how do we access a single character? To access a single character, you just put the name of the string, then you open the square brackets, then you put the index. Index is just the position of that specific letter. For example, if I say name, then I say 0. Name 0 refers to this J, in this case of John. Name 1 refers to this O. Name 2 refers to this H. Name 3 refers to this N, and so on. So if, for example, if I write this, let's say string name equals to whatever, John, then I say message box dot show, then I'm going to say name 0. So we are displaying the first thing. So this name 0, this is a character. So for the message box we have to have a string. So there are many ways to do this. You can say to string, or you can say plus an empty string. It's going to convert it. So let's just execute this. We must get J because J is at position 0. So I got this J. Even if I change the program, maybe let's modify the program and say name equals to txt name.text. Then I will allow the user to enter the name. Then I will display the first character from that specific name. So it's executing, then it's still building. Let's see, still building. So if I enter something like end, so in the code it's going to store this thing, this end on my name. Then if I say show name 0, it's going to display the first character, which is A. So I have A as my result. Then now we can move on. Or yeah, changing a single letter or character from a string. to change that specific character, you just put the name of the string, then the index equals to, then you can put the new character that you want. For example, if I say name, then 3 equals to s at the end. At position 3, it's going to change the n that was at position 3. It's going to change to this s. So I have this jaws like kind of thing. That's how you change individual characters. So the next thing, we are going to consider the property named length for the string. So it returns the number of characters in a string. For example, if I have the string name equals to hello, how many characters do I have? I have H1, E2, L it's 3, then L it's 4, O it's 5. So in total I have 5 characters. It must show 5. So for example, let's say we want to calculate the number of characters for whatever name the user enters. So I'm going to say, okay, your name, I can say your name has, then I'm going to say plus, I'm going to say name.length will return the number of characters plus I can say characters, or in this case I can simplify it and say letters. So first I'm going to get whatever the user enters, store that in this variable, then at the end I'm going to just display the length of that specific name. So let's see how this works. So I'm going to say name, I can enter anything, maybe my name for example. So my name has 7 characters, so I'm expecting your name has 7 characters or 7 letters. So this was the result. So that's how you use the dot length, but for now it's not that important. You are going to use it when you get to loops, but you have to know it. Then now we move to string concatenation or addition of strings. So string concatenation or additions of strings is the process of appending one string to the end of another. So we append one string at the end of another. So for example, let's say you have this name equals to Newton. We know that in memory, Newton is going to be stored as a sequence of 2, 4, 6 characters. Yeah, 2, 4, 6 characters. Then surname, string surname, it's Isaac. Then I say string full name equals to name plus surname. So how does this work in memory? In memory, I'm going to have this name pointing to this Newton, which is separated into 6 characters. Then I have this surname, which is Isaac, which is separated into these individual characters. Then when I add those two, I append immediately at the end of name. I'm going to append the surname. So it's like just putting these two together or combining these two together. So at the end, I have one thing. So I appended this second one from the plus to the first one. So at the end, I have Newton, Isaac, then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until 10. So that's appending. You just add at the end of the first one. So let's see, maybe we can modify this program. Remember, the main goal of this part is not to actually code, is to show how to access things. So let's add another text box. Maybe I'm going to put it here. Then I'm going to add a label. So just to name. So my thing, I can close this. then my label, the name is going to be simple, so it's going to be surname, like that. Then here I'm going to say txt surname. The name of the text box is going to be txt then surname, something like that. Then I just do this. So we want to do the same thing using this. When I click submit, I want the name and surname to be displayed. So I'm going to have my string name, my inputs, then string surname, something like that. Then I'm going to, where do I get my name and surname? From the user. Name is equals to txt name.text. Then on my left I have a string, on my right I have a string, so it's valid. Then I have the surname equals to txt surname.text. Then on my left I have a string, on my right I have a string, so it's valid. No need to convert to. Then the other thing that I need is an output or result. I can name this result, or I can name this full name. So in this full name, I'm going to say, okay, my full name is equals to name plus the surname. Then let's see what's going to happen when we execute this. So the name, we get it from the user, the surname, we get it from the user. The full name is the result. So now it's building. So if I enter that thing, so we had Newton, then Isaac. So my name is going to contain this Newton, then Isaac. Then my full name is equals to Newton plus Isaac. So the immediately at the end of N, I'm going to add Isaac. So let's submit. Oh, we didn't display to see the result. So we need the output. I can say message box dot show. Then I put the full name. Full name is a string, so no need to convert. Then I can execute this. Then now it's building. Then I can say, okay, Newton, then Isaac. Then I can submit this. You see, Newton, then immediately at the end, it appended Isaac. So why isn't it that we are not getting spaces? Here I have spaces. Here I have spaces, but I'm not getting those spaces. So the spaces here are for the user. They are not for the compiler. The compiler doesn't really know that you have spaces. So how can we add spaces? Or before adding spaces, let's see how this is executed. So we have that immediately at the end we just put. Then what if we wanted spaces? You are going to explicitly put space in between them. So I'm going to say plus. Then because I want a space must be a string. So I space. Then I add again. So I'm adding. This means at the end of name, I'm going to add a space. Then at the end of space, I'm going to add the surname. So let's execute this now and see the result. Then I'm going to say I can start with the name Isaac, Newton, whatever. Then I click submit. Now I have Isaac space Newton. So if you want to a space, you have to show that you want a space. Then the next thing, even in memory, it's going to be Isaac plus, then the space plus, then Newton. Then in the full name is going to be Isaac. Then on position 5, that space, it was added. Then after the space, we have that Newton. So what if we wanted the output to be like this? How can we do that? Let's say I say, okay, I saw from that I want my output to be on different lines. Then I say plus. Then I say, okay, because it's a different line, let's just press enter there and then say surname. Then I become happy that yeah, now I'm going to get two separate lines because I said name plus surname because this is on a different line. Let's see if this is the case. Let's see what's going to happen. So if I execute this, I say maybe Vincent, whatever, then I can say your surname or my surname. Then I execute this submit. Look at this, it's on the same line. Then you'll be like, but on my code it's on separate lines. How is this possible? As I said, spaces, blanks, whatever, they are for the they are for users to read, not for the compiler. So to add a space, you have to add a new line character. So a new line character, you put it inside double quotation marks, then you put /n. This, we call this a new line character. So when the compiler reads this, it's going to say, okay, I have name. Then when it sees this /n, it's going to say, oh, I'm moving to a new line. Then after a new line, I'm adding this surname. So you have to tell the compiler that you are going to a new line. So let's again, then I'm going to enter my surname like this. So now I have these two on different lines. So let's see. So now we want the following. You can pause the video and just try it yourself, which is, it must be easy. So I'm going to have string name equals to Isaac, string surname equals to Newton, string output equals to empty. So the first method that you can use is to say output equals to name, because this is going to be constant. This is the value that you know always. The only thing that changes this name. So you put it in double quotation marks. Then it's a value. It's not a constant. It's not an integer. This, it's a value. Then plus. Then you have the name which is changing. Plus the new line. We know that immediately after name we need a new line which is inside this, like surname. So new line, surname, both of them are inside double quotation marks, then plus surname. So in memory it's going to be like this, name with that dot. Because I have the space, I am going to have on position 5, the space is going to be there. Then name, if I entered Isaac, is going to be Isaac. Then plus, then the new line character, the way it is, it takes one block, even though it's two characters, because it has that / or /, it's stored as a single thing. Then surname, then a space, then Newton. Then you have this name space Isaac, then new line tells the compiler to go to the next line, then it's going to continue whatever on that next line. That's option 1. Option 2, it's using plus equals to. So initially our output was what? Our output was empty. It was an empty string. Then I want to add something to that string, to that output. So output plus equals to. This means on the current output, add whatever I'm doing. So I'm going to add name. Initially it was empty, so name is going to be added like this, space plus, then this name is going to be added, then plus, then this new line is going to be added. So after executing the first the first line I'm going to have name, then Isaac, then new line. This is the, or let, for simplicity, let me just demonstrate it. Let me say name equal say name, then let's say string output. We know that the first method is to say string, then no, it's to say name is equals to txt, getting our name and surname, text, then surname surname is equals to txt name dot text. Then we have our thing, our what do we call this, our output. After collecting, we say output is equals to, then is equals to what? Our output is equals to your name, or we can say name, then plus, what do we need? We need the txt, we need the name plus, this means immediately at the end of the space we are adding the name that we got from the user, plus then new line, then surname, because we know the surname. New line, it's read as go to the next line, then you continue whatever you have. Then I'm going to say this, then plus, then I'm going to say surname, then I'm done like that. So it's going to say name. If I enter Isaac, then it's going to be Isaac. Then when it see the new line, it's going to the new line, then surname, it continues there. Then at the end of this, it's going to add this surname. Let's execute this and see how it works. So I'm going to enter my name, then my surname, then I'm going to say submit. Oh, I didn't display the output. Then when you are done, you can see message box dot show. I forgot that. Then I can just close this and execute this again. There were build errors, so let's check what's the, oh, I didn't show the output. Then I can now execute this. So I'm going to enter my name, then I'm going to enter my surname, then I'm going to click on submit. So this means I made a mistake on the code, but as you see, it was on new lines. Let's see. Oh, I said txt. I was supposed to say txt surname, not txt name. So that's how it works. Or let's observe the second option. So the second option was to say or the second method was to say output plus equals to txt name, not txt but the name. Before the name we have to display a text your, or we can say name, then plus the corresponding name. Then we are getting an error because we didn't initialize this output. So initialize. So another important thing is to initialize your variables. Strings, you initialize them to empty strings. Then doubles, integers, you initialize them to 0. So name plus equals to the name, then plus a new line, right? Then after immediately plus equals to, then the surname, then plus the surname, then you add a new line. What I like about this is that you won't have like a long line of code because you separated that into multiple lines. So when the compiler reads this, it's going to say, okay, output plus equals to, we are adding this to the previous output. The previous output was empty. Now we are adding this, then we have a new line. Then next time we are adding this to the current output. So I can debug and show message box dot show output at this stage. We want to see output at every step. Dot show output. Output. Then I have a semicolon. Then I can, yeah, these two stages, or another again message box dot show output. We want to debug this or to see what's happening. So initially, let's see. So I'm going to have name, then surname. Then I click submit. So the first time my output is empty. So my output is empty. Then I say okay. Then after that first line, the problem is that I can't see. After this first line, this is my output. Then after that other line, this is my output. So it goes step by step. So that's how it works. You can either use that first method of writing a very long line, or you can separate it into multiple lines. Then I can clear this. Then we can move to another control. So another control is the your rich text box. You can either say RTX name or RTB name, it doesn't matter. So let's see how is the rich text box. Normally you want to show your output on your form, not on a message box. Message box is used for warnings, for instructions. It's not used to show the output in most cases. Then Control Alt X, I'm going to open my rich text box. So I have this rich text box. I can increase the size. Then you can change the background color, the font. You can make this nice if you like, but I'm not going to teach you how to do that. You have to learn that for yourself. Then you can play around with the properties. You can learn more about the properties. If you are stuck, you go to Microsoft on Google, then you search whatever property you want. So this is a rich text box. So again, it's used to display text or output on multiple lines. So we use the rich text box to format text or to format the output for now. Then how do we add or append text to a rich text box? Now we want to display the text on a rich text box. Let me check if the mic is on. You will find out that I'm recording. Then after 1 hour, 2 hours, then I realize that the mic is off. Yeah, then I have to restart. So now if the mic seems fine, then let's see what can we do. RTX, the first option, the way we did this string, RTX name plus equals to the output or the string, or you can say RTX name dot append text output. These two lines do the same thing. They literally do the same thing. For example, let's say we want score 10, result win. So we can change a few things. Okay, for my result, I'm going to store them in name, then my score in age. Then I can, or my score here, I can change here. My score goes here, then this one I can change it to txt score. Txt score. Then I can name this one is fine. Then I'm going to say rtx or rtb, you can use it. I can say result. So first, what are the necessary inputs required? I need the name of the user. Not necessarily the name. In this case, it's result because we want a win or lose. So I have to rename or to rename, yeah, or to redesign this. So I have my what you call this thing, the result, whether you won or lost. Then I'm going to change this also to txt result. So txt result. So the first thing that I need is my variables. So we have the name. So we have string result, initialized to empty, then integer score also initialized to 0. Then I get my input. So it's a safe approach to initialize your variables. Then I'm going to say, okay, my result equals to txt result.text. In my left, I have result, which is a string. On my right, I have result, this dot text, which is a string. So it's fine. Then I have my score is equals to then txt score dot text. Now, if I look at this, I have score, which is an integer. On my right, I have this dot text, which is a string. So I have to convert to int 32. Then I just open and close. Then after this, I need to add this to my rich text box. So the first approach is to say rtx result dot text plus equals to I need score, then plus, then the score. Score is an integer and I'm adding it to a string. So normally for string concatenation, when you are adding a number or whatever to a string, automatically it's going to be converted without you needing to convert. If you want, you can convert it, you can say to string, or you can say convert to string, but automatically it's converted when you are saying plus, when you are adding it with a string. Then the next thing, I need a new line after the score. So new line, because here I have a new line. I have score space this 10, then the semicolon, then I have rtx result.text, then plus equals to, then output, no, not output, result. Then I'm going to add the specific result. The result is a string, no need to convert. Then I can add a new line. So when I run this, I'm going to have score, then whatever score I enter, then I have a new line, then I have result, then whatever result I entered, then new line. Then let's execute this and see if that's the case. And let's see, I didn't want the video to be this long. Let's see how many. It's already 1 hour, which is long. So I might have to cut it, but let me just finish these basics. So let's say win, then score 200 or 3000, whatever. Let's execute. You see, I have score 3000, result, then I have win. So that's how you can do it. The first approach is used plus equals to, or you can say another possible approach is to say dot append text, like that. Then you open, then you put whatever. Then even here, instead of saying plus equals to, I can say dot append text, then I open, then I close, then I execute this. I'm going to get the same thing. Let's say result a score 30 or whatever, 33. I get the same thing. So you can either use append, but notice that when you are not adding this new line, what's going to happen? This new line character is important. So the compiler has to know that you are adding a new line. So now let's execute this and see what's cooking after baking. So when I execute this, I'm going to say, this is my result, then this is my score. Then I execute this. I'm going, you see, immediately there was no new line because you didn't tell the compiler that you need a new line. So that's all about the text box, or the rich text box in this case, not the text box. To change the text RTX, which you don't normally do, I mean to access. And I want you to notice something. Then let's return the new line. Let's do this. We execute this and see. So let's say a then 30 or 20, whatever. Then I say submit. Look at this. Submit. It's just going to repeat the same code without even clearing the text box. So you just have to know that every time you click the button, the same code is going to be executed. Then let's do another thing. The list box. So a list box is a list of items. It's not a list of integer. Items can be items. It's another data type, which is a class sort of data type. So items can either be a string. Remember that the value from the numeric up down can be string or numbers. An item can be a string. An item can be an integer. An item can be a decimal. An item can be like any of those data types, even objects. So how do we deal with this list box? Normally a list box is used to arrange items. So I can delete my text box, then I can add Ctrl-Alt-X to open my toolbox. Then I can say this thing list box. So this is my list box. By default it's written list box. This is the name of the list box. If I change it, maybe LST numbers, it's LST numbers. So this text is just used, it's there to differentiate it from a rich text box. Then if you check, it doesn't have the text property, so it only has items, which is a collection, which is an array. So what can we do? So it's a list of items similar to a string but stored like in a horizontal or in a vertical position in this case. Items 0 refers to this, items 1 refers to this, items 2, and so on. You are going to understand this when you get to loops and arrays. Then how do we add items to a list box? So the general syntax of adding items is lst name.items.add, then you put the item. That item can be in double string or boolean. So for example, lst items.add this, lst items.add this, it's going to add. Then let's just demonstrate the addition of items. So let's say I want to add this. I can call it number, whatever. I can, what am I doing? I can change this to number. So number. Then this I can change it to txt number. So every time I click submit, I want to add like a number to that text box. So I'm going to the code, so I can remove these, whatever I had. Then I can remove also these. I can have a string or int number to get the number is equals to. So best practice to initialize these things. Then txt number dot text, but that's a string. I have to convert to an integer, to int 32. Then I just close, or I just close this, then comma. Then yeah, then now I want to add lst numbers dot items dot add. That's how you add then the number. Then I can execute this. So it's running. Then I can say okay, 10. Then I say submit. So 10 is going to be added because of this line of code, lst numbers dot add. Then next I can say another one. I can say 20. So 20 is going to be added to the next available position. So that's why I'm saying it's a list of numbers. It's something like this. I'm adding 10 here. Next, I'm adding 20 to that next available spot or position. Then I click on submit. Yeah, every time I click submit, it will add the number to the next available space. Then that's the list box. Then what else can we do? We can remove items. Removing items is not as straightforward as you can think, but we have this easier case where you can just say remove add. So lst name dot remove add, then you specify the index. For example, lst count dot remove at 1. So at position 1 we have this 20. So after this line of code, 20 will be removed. So I'm going to have 1030. This was just an error. 1030. So removing items is not as easy as it seems. The easiest case that you can do is to remove at. We will cover more about this later. So then getting the selected item, you just say lst name dot selected item. Even this one will deal with it later. Then in part 3 that's where we are going to code before we move to session 2, which is if statements or decision making. So we are going to cover part 3. Part 3 is going to be problem solving. Part 3 is going to involve global and local variables. And more like problems, it's going to be more about coding and problem solving. Then session 2, or the next section, is going to be about decision making, where we use switch statements, if statements, and anything that you want to use. So I know these lessons may be boring for now because it's a lot of theory. I'm not coding a lot, but that's how it works. You have to know the basics. Before you can do anything, you have to know the concept. Then you can apply the concept after you learned that specific part. So in most cases you are going to be like demotivated, like don't understand what's happening. Yes, it's going to be a little bit challenging for some people, but it's doable. You just have to practice. Practice makes perfect. So yeah, I'll see you guys in part 3.